Um, this is the first time we've tried this as a club, and I'm delighted to delighted to be able to do this. And it's worked so easily for most of us. The good news is, as I said earlier, I found a parking place right out front, and the restrooms are already unlocked. So I'm in great shape here. It's going to be fun. If everybody, Richard's going to take us through a little bit about working with Zoom in a minute, just before we get started on anything, to be sure we're all lined up. But do know that everybody's device, whether it's a laptop, desktop, Android or iOS device, will have all the same functions in Zoom, but they may not all be located quite in the same place on your screen. So if he says upper right-hand corner, it might be someplace else, but it's there. So play around a little bit. Our biggest concern with large groups is talking over each other. And so when we go through show and tell, we know there's one person going to be talking. And if you just either stay quiet or keep your mic muted, that will help, especially in very large groups. And it seems to be working really well so far. Appreciate that. Richard, do you want to spend just a minute before we get into much more details to be sure we're all up on our technology stuff?
Sure. A couple of things. Those of you that logged in early saw the little PowerPoint going on that told you how to mute and told you how to shift from gallery view to speaker view and stuff like that. Is everybody set up that wants to be set up? Okay, I would reiterate and recommend that if you are not speaking or don't have a lot to say at that moment, please try to mute your device, and you can set yourself up on mute as you saw before. There, you can either go on your film strip icon, or you can go to the menu bar, which is either on the bottom or the top, depending on what kind of device you're using, and hit the little microphone icon, and that will mute you and unmute you as well. Remember that when your video is on, your video is on, so you are on TV. I don't know how many of you are wearing pants right now. A lot of people might not be. If you are not, and you happen to get up, please divert your camera somewhere else, because most of us don't want to see your junk. Also, be aware that if you have someone walking around your house, they should be dressed properly, otherwise they might be embarrassed a bit. If you have any barking dogs or conversations going on in the background, or somebody's watching the tube or something like that, just make sure you're muted as much as possible. And I was just reminded, if you pick your nose, be sure to wash your hands well. Try not to touch your face. And of course, everyone needs to keep social distancing. Let's see. We're going to be doing this again next month. On the 9th of May, I have scheduled a speaker from British Columbia named Ed Preddy, who he's demonstrated at the National Symposia a couple of times. He's going to be talking about reproduction. So let that fester in your minds for a little bit, and look forward to next month's meeting.
Reproduction as in sex?
You'll find out. So, does anybody have any questions about what's going on here? This is the third club meeting I've been to this week on Zoom, and each one's been getting better so far. I hope this continues that trend. So I'm going to hand it over to Jim.
Okay, thank you. Let me welcome people from all time zones. Some of you may or may not know our member who doesn't attend very many meetings, Mike Bulat, who is where work's getting started in the morning. He's at lunchtime. He's talking to us from the East Coast, and it's nice to see Mike. You'll see his face up in a few seconds here when he does part of the show and tell. It's good to have you, and it's nice when we are in different places, we can still all come together, and that's a delight. And welcome to him, and welcome to Bob Bly in West Bay, who's also joined us from his club. And a couple of quick announcements. Standard meeting format, we'll do as much as we can. Two announcements. Bob Ackley sent me a note earlier saying he has some of these wedgies that's used in segmented turning. Apparently he got double shipped, and if you need some, he has them available, and you can just contact him directly. Dave Fleissig, when he comes on in a couple of minutes in show and tell, has a threading jig that he has purchased. I actually purchased the same one, and his is available. So if you're interested, contact him privately by email and make arrangements. And if you are the second person and it's already gone, he will tell you where you can find another one that you could have. A couple available. Hugh, are you available to talk to us a little bit about how we're doing membership-wise?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, fine.
Well, I don't have a lot to report. Our current membership is at 132. And that's a little below our average. Average over the years has been around 140. Last year we had a particularly good year and we got to 162. And I was hoping that was going to start a trend, but it hasn't. So we're 30 below that this year, but we're a little below our average, which is just about 140, 142, that sort of number we usually have. This year we're a little below. We're at 132. However, in the last month or so, needless to say, we haven't had any new members, and we obviously won't expect any, I don't believe. So that's all I have to remember.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll provide enough content that some of our newer attendees of meetings and students and so on will find needing additional entertainment and will be part of their group. Tony, I think that you're here now. We've had a lot of interest in the carob and its continuing supply. Do you want to talk a little bit about where we are with wood? Tony, can you hear me?
You may not be on anymore.
Oh, you thought I saw him a little while ago. Well, if he shows up later, we'll cut him back in again. Okay. I did mention Amazon Smile a couple of times, and it really has been a thing I've been using a lot. I've been using it, number one, because one of the hobbies I have during this particular period of time is buying stuff, it seems like. And so if I'm buying, I might as well use the Amazon Smile technique to get a little bit of money going back to the club. It changes nothing. So I just log on to smile.amazon.com, and I do what I normally do. So, and how much we're getting out of that in terms of total dollars per quarter, I don't have any idea. So we'll find out one of these days when Claudia can give us a report on where we are with Amazon. Tony, you are there. Come back and talk to us a little bit about carob and other wood, if you can unmute.
There we go. We managed to get 2 loads of carob from Fremont delivered over to the Pleasant Hill to our classroom there. But unfortunately, that, under my impression at least, is still locked and not available. I did get a 3rd load about just a couple of days ago that was delivered to Brad Adams' studio in Venetia. So there is a, and my load, this is one huge trunk, and then about 4 other larger pieces that range from about 16-inch in diameter to 32-inch diameter. Some crotch pieces as well. So really quite nice wood. But we can't, of course, have everybody rushing over to Brad's studio. So I would suggest, if you're interested in it, contact Brad and sort of arrange for a time that you can go there where he will be there. And he's very good at keeping the social distance, of course, and I would expect you would too. I would also remind people that if they're going to go there, bring your chainsaw, bring all of your protective equipment, including, of course, your mask, and make sure that you do all of that correctly. Brad has a forklift to help because some of this wood you can't move by hand. and there are some beautiful pieces there that are really quite worth the time. I turned one, actually rough turn yesterday, and the wood is just amazing. So that's the story on the carob. Most of us I know don't lack for wood, so there aren't any other wood reports and that stuff, and maybe just as well. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to say one thank you also to the work that Dave Bentley and Richard Dietrich have put together in just learning about this Zoom software, setting up meetings, coordinating these events, and so on. There's so much to be learned, and we need to learn it quickly because we want to be participative in the largest wood turning community we can create. Dave has subscribed to the Zoom software in the pro version on the benefit, for the benefit of the club, I should say. So we can host up to 100 connections per event. And since we're at 60 some odd right now for this event, we're pushing the number already. Unfortunately, when we get to over 100 and we try to increase it beyond that, the cost escalates significantly. And so while we can afford this, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for us to afford a larger connection. But personal thanks to Richard and to David for all the work they've been doing. David and I have been working on other projects, which unfortunately we've had to change around a little bit. And that's putting together all of the class materials, all the class lectures for all of our classes and getting them taped and video up online. And if you go to Dave Bentley's website, you'll find that all of our Wood Turning 101 course materials are videotaped and up there for you to look at. Now, most of you are beyond that, so it's more entertainment than anything else. But you might send the link to somebody who is interested in wood turning and has equipment that they can play with. I'm in the process of putting Wood Turning 150, the next level, the advanced beginners class, together. And I posted on my website the first and the second of the two classes. The third one, I'm having some editing challenges, but it should be done by the end of today. So David will have all of the videos up on his site. He doesn't have the 150s up yet, but I'm sure they'll be posted in a day or so. Subscribe. Subscribing means that you get an announcement when another video goes up. It says, hey, there's another video there. But it also gives him a chance to increase his capacity of membership, so to speak. When he gets to 1,000 subscriptions, he gets to a place where he can do other kinds of functions inside of YouTube. And that function is called live streaming. And that's not available until he has 1,000 subscriptions. So you guys are watching it. Answer the phone. 201987738. We all write that number down, right? So we can call him back.
Jim, while you're waiting,
yes.
The answer to your question, Amazon, we got in at the end of February, $60.40.
Wow, thank you. I didn't know you were on here. I was looking earlier and I didn't find you. Thanks, Claudia. Appreciate that. $60 in February, so it's not very much each month, but $60 a month times 12
Well, no,
months
that
is a lot.
comes in every quarter, Jim.
Okay, 60 times 4 then, so we got to spend more. But it's a good start, and I appreciate getting the money.
Jim, that's 60 worth a member that hasn't signed up yet, so that's fabulous.
Say again, Kim?
I said that 60 is worth a member that hasn't signed up yet, so let's keep spending.
That's great, yeah. Spending is one of the things we can do. I appreciate that. We're going into show and tell. And this is the way it's going to work. It's going to work just like it does in a real club meeting, except for the fact that I'm going to call the first person and I'm going to tell number 2 that you're next. And the reason is so you get ready to talk. The way it's going to work is Richard has pictures of the items that are going to be shown, and he's going to bring them up on the screen. And then the first person, in this case it's David Fleissig, is going to then talk about his piece. Now, we only have 10 pieces to be shown, and the key is that if everybody takes about 2 or 3 minutes, we'll be just fine. If we got up to 20 pieces and everybody took more than 2 or 3 minutes, we could spend better part of an hour on show and tell. We don't want to do that. So show and tell is going to be limited in these meetings to people who have sent pictures in advance. And the first, it's 10 this time. We can go up to, I think, maybe 20. The first people who get them into Richard will be able to have show and tell. Rest of us, I'm sorry, we'll just have to, we'll have to wait till the next month. Pictures can be taken with your cell phone. The quality of cameras on the cell phones are so good these days that the pictures will probably be really, really nicely displayed. Be sure you have good lighting. And the second thing to do is be sure you have some sort of a neutral background behind us so we're not distracted by other things sitting on the dining room table with your latest piece. So a little planning to make the picture show up as good as possible will be good. So here's how it's going to go. Dave Fleisig's up number 1. Charlie, Saul, you'll be getting ready. You're number 2 in line. So David, tell us what you have.
I will, as soon as the picture comes up. Okay.
Like that.
All right. I've set my timer for 2 minutes. And here we go. So I call these pandemic projects. And this is a version of Jim's transition vessels. And I've got about 3 more in process. On this one, I had a couple of chunks of walnut. I had a yellow heart ring that I had made for some other project, the wrong size. And so decided to incorporate it. I used some other sort of bits and pieces and put it together in 2 parts, hollowed each part separately, joined them together, finished it up just as Jim demonstrated so well at the Learn and Turn group in our last meeting. So that's that item. Second is I got sort of taken with the idea of making bracelets. And I've made, I don't know, 25 or so so far. This is one of the few I've made that was actually made from a solid piece of wood as opposed to segmented. Now this one does have a cast epoxy interior. Doesn't show up too well in this photograph, but you can see it. The wood is cherry, just has some simple beads on it. And I rather liked it. And by the way, this photograph is with an iPhone camera. And let's see, that was about 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. David, on the first vessel that you showed, it looks like there's an inside ring also. As though, is there a ring inside or a ring on that neck?
Well, no, what I did, Jim, is I had a thin strip of Spectraply, which is the outer edge, which is like red and yellow. And I laminated it to an extra piece of yellow heart, cut it into segments, put some veneer in between the segments, and then made a ring, which was half yellow heart and half Spectraply. So that's what you're looking at.
It's a nice effect. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Charlie, are you ready? Jean-Louis was going to be next, but excuse me, Jean-Louis has stepped away because his wife is taken suddenly ill, and we wish her well, but he had to, so Gary Bingham will be following Charlie. Go ahead, Charlie.
Good morning, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine.
Oh, okay, great. Hey, it's really great to join you this morning. And so I have been doing, rough turning timber, and most of my timber is plain. Most of my turnings start off plain, flawed, cracked woods. And this piece had all of the above. And so I was trying to figure out what can I do with it. It hides a lot of the flaws. And so this is a piece of sycamore, 12-inch by 6-inch, a diamondback rattler. And first and foremost, this is a hollow form, and it's finished inside and out.
Wow.
And I completed the finish in a polyurethane, but did not put any finish on the carved area. And then I did fretwork, piercing, carving, And then I did a basket weave, sort of my version of a basket weave illusion and pyrography. So I figured, okay, how do you take a basket weave and make it more difficult? and then I used the Faber-Castell permanent ink pens. And by the way, I want to thank Jim Rogers for recommending a particular type of visor because I needed this for my eyesight on this one. Anyway, so the things that I like are the fact that it has a nice finish inside. And we may have a close-up of this one, but the rattlesnake tongue is actually two archways.
Oh my.
Two archways, and you can see the pattern that continues underneath. And I also like the fact that the scales, if we go back to the other photo, you can see that the scales are actually going in two different directions. So what I did is I decided to wrap the snake in two different directions so that the scales would go off in different directions. One of the challenges that I had was that making the snake scales smaller and larger graduated in proportion to the snake body thickness. Mm-hmm. And so starting off with the larger snake body and then graduating on down to the tail, which has exactly the same number of rows of scales, just smaller. And so I had a lot of fun with this one and working on my next one now.
Wow, that'll take the rest of the year to finish another one like that. How much time did you put into that, Charlie?
Well, you know, Jim, actually, I think it went along really very well. You know, all of us can imagine the turning went fairly quickly. Some of the challenges were the fact that my original rough turn only allowed a certain dimension. And so I was, when I finally decided to do this snake, you know, the top of the head is exactly, a lot of the parts of the snake are on the surface of the rough turn. And I just was able to get a finish on it just below the rough turn. And for example, the tail, I would have liked to have had maybe a section of it bent a little bit differently, but that was all the rough turn really allowed. So you do have certain constraints, but you know, I had a lot of fun. I made my own pyrography tip for the first time, and then of course after I did the coloring, I recognized from a different piece that I did where I put a urethane finish on it and all the colors bled. And so I realized that for all of the areas that are ink colored, I gave a couple of light sprays of lacquer, and it worked out just fine.
Yeah. Thank you. Workable fixative and lacquer is pretty much the same stuff, and it does help to lock things down. I saw that piece, and I'll tell you what, I thought it was a real snake curled up on your bowl when I first saw it on my small screen. Let me show you what it is on my bigger screen. I don't know if you can see it over here. This is what I look at, looking away sometimes, because my full-size computer gives me a so much better picture. So I'm not distracted by your presentations. I'm just looking at a better image. Okay, next up is Gary. Jack Galletti in the wings. John Louis is unfortunately missing.
But here is the bowl that he sent a picture of. Beautiful burl, not sure what kind, but it's a gorgeous bowl. So too bad he's not here to tell us about it. So
yeah,
Gary
wish his
Bingham.
wife well. Gary.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is a lamp, as you can see, and the base is made of raffle wood, and the stem is ash wood that I had, and then the lamp shade is raffle wood from the Christmas party, and I hadn't really planned on painting the shade, but I hadn't all held it together by hand. I hadn't did the gluing, and it tipped over, and the shade got a little cracked. So I glued it up, and it got painted. Now the plan is from the American Woodwork Turner October 2019 issue, firewood table lamp by Rick Rich, and a very good plan. And I used it. The shade, I was inspired by the wood turners, American Wood Turner. A few months ago, they had a person who made shades, and I could not get it so the light would come through that shade, so I would get it too thin. It was thin enough. I was frightened after that. So that's my effort right here. Not much else to say about it. I made one previous lamp many years ago, which the wife still brings out on occasion, depending on her color scheme that she's highlighting to that particular holiday. So that completes my presentation.
Thank you very much. It looks great.
Thank you.
And if it was cracked, I assume that in the upper left-hand corner, is that where the crack was?
You know, I think the crack is almost invisible after the painting.
Great.
Yeah,
it worked
so
out
it really
just the way
is
you'd like it to be.
In fact, my wife gives me a bad time because I admit faults readily, and she'll her father will tell me, don't tell him. So anyway.
Thank you very
welcome.
much. Jack Galletti, are you around? And Steve Smears, you're in the background.
Jack, before you start, let me just quickly thank Gary for putting his scale on the bottom of the picture. If you notice, there's a little ruler down there, and you can see some markers of inches and centimeters. It's a 6-inch ruler. So that gives you an idea of how big the lamp is. It's kind of like what they do when they photograph pathology specimens, but it's very, very helpful since we can't see it in the flesh. Because otherwise, Charlie's snake may actually have been 2 inches in diameter, but like he told us how big it really was. But just for next time, next time you send in photos, try to put something in there to give us a scale. You could put a coin in there if it's very small. Anyway, Jack,
Good idea. Jack, are you there?
Also, while we're waiting for Jack, a lot of people put in or send in photos that had very distracting backgrounds. I took the liberty of using Photoshop to blur some of the distractions out, including this one. So, are you there, Jack?
Still looking for Jack. Is he physically here?
I don't see Jack on the screen.
Okay. Well, Jack sent in this two pictures of this lovely segmented bowl, dark wood and light wood and in between wood, and it just it's stunning. An excellent job. So also showing off his lathe, but you there, Jack? Nope. Okay.
No, sorry about that. Steve, you're up, and Jay Holland, we know you're here, so be ready. Steve?
Yeah.
Go ahead, we hear you.
You can?
Yes.
Hey, during this part of the Zoom, are we supposed to be able to see just like 4 people on the bottom of the screen or something?
Depends a little bit on how big your screen is. On my desktop, I have 6 people. On my pad, I have 4. It's the width of the screen. So I can scroll it, by the way, by just using my finger.
Yeah.
Oh, there's probably a lot more than that, actually.
You can
about 61.
See the,
So, okay, so we're looking at my walnut bowl. Actually, in this photo, it's still on the lathe. I'm still sanding it. And I had, luckily, a neighbor right across the street called me up one day and said, "You want to have our walnut tree? We're taking it down tomorrow." Because they know, I make things like wood. And I said, "Yeah, well, sure." So I go over, beautiful, live, healthy walnut tree, and it's wrecking their foundation while they're taking it down. So I ended up with the whole trunk of this, 48, 52-inch old growth walnut tree, and spent, I don't know, a month cutting up. And anyway, this particular piece had a rot hole in the side of it, and it sat on my shelf drying. And of course, I looked at it for a year and a half or so, and I was wondering, what am I going to do with that hole? Because I'd already tried just leaving those holes. Anyway, I filled it up. And if we can go to the other picture, we'll, there. Now this has got one of those bad backgrounds, but it was the only one I had that was in the wood shop. So I thought, well, you guys might like to see my wood shop, but you don't really see much of it. But anyway, there's the piece ended up with when I filled the rotten hole, it actually came out really good, but it needed something to balance it because it was just too strong, big hot spot for the overall look of the piece. So I added, as you can see, a base and a matching cast acrylic color. I actually mixed my own colors and then pouring. And other than that, it's basically just a beautiful walnut bowl with these acrylics. I might say, when I was, a lot of people wonder how did I fill that hole, of course, and I put a piece of tape behind the hole and filled it up with acrylic. Yeah, and of course the heat from the acrylic setting that melted the tape. Oh. It all poured out on my lathe, and then eventually I used different materials that could take the heat and got the piece finished. And I'm pretty happy with it.
So what did you use finally as a dam, Steve?
Yeah, I used I cut a piece of plastic out of a cup, a plastic cup that was big, and it had about the right arc on it. And then I clamped it on. I made it oversized. Yeah, and clamped it on, and it actually started leaking. And I had close by some that metal tape that I don't know what people use it, or probably ducting and stuff. It's not duct tape, it's actually metal. Right. And I plugged up the holes for the leaks with.
Okay. And then you turn the outside back down after you pull the tape off, so if it bulged out a little bit, you fixed it as you finished off, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I like the way the light shines through it in this picture. Highlights the patch nicely.
It was, kind of lucky. There's a window over there on the right, and that shines on my workstation too really nicely. I think I'm lucky and that I have a really nice wood shop.
This is a good picture too. I know we have photoshopping in the background. When it's blurred out like that, that's works out just fine. It's a nice setting, but that means that Richard has to go through every picture that has a bad background and fix it. So that's more time. So if we shoot them well, Richard has a little less time prepping.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have the photo cube and all that for sales photos. And I just when I was picking this out, I thought this would be more interesting, but I can tell now that was a bad idea, and I'll get it right.
This photo looks fine.
Okay.
In the current state right now, I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Steve. Jay, next, but Hugh Bevan Thomas will be warming up his vocal cords in the background.
Yeah, this whole thing's coming off really well.
Thank you. Jay.
I am here. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I was really impressed with the Graham Prettle presentation back in November. And having seen him before when he was in his lots of fire and smoke and burning and all that kind of
Yeah.
days, I really enjoyed what he was doing this time. And the eggs, I was very impressed with the eggs that the young lady was doing. And so I decided to do something for Easter this year. And there's a bowl with 7 of the eggs in it. I really like the one over on the right-hand side, the white one. That was brought to me by the very, very rare Christmas tree trunk cutoff bird. So you can turn an egg out of just about anything if you wanted to. So it came out really kind of cute. I did 2 bowls. The bowls are made out of pepper tree wood and 20 eggs. There you can see all 20 of the eggs. There are 12 regular eggs, 4 inside-out eggs. They started with 5, but number 5 fell victim to that one last cut with a newly sharpened tool syndrome, and it really shattered all over. And then there are 4 of the Graham Prettle style eggs, where I made the burning tool and really torched them down and painted them with the toothbrush, the whole bit, for Hugh's benefit. I know he has a dollar store over there in Moraga. Here in Benicia, we can only afford a 99-cent store, but you can still buy 4 brushes for $1. And had a lot of fun doing those that way. My 20 eggs means that there are 20 less wine bottle stoppers in California. So had a lot of fun with this project, and I was going to bring it to the March meeting when everybody would have had a month to work on Easter projects. But at least I got a chance to show them off this way. So there you have Easter at the Holland House.
That's great work. It's great work. The interesting thing is that you did so many different kinds of shapes and styles and effects. It makes a nice collection.
Well, it makes a lot of different choices to display.
Are you keeping these, or do they go to grandkids?
Well, I have a sneaky feeling they're going to end up in other places.
Yeah, they will appreciate them too. Thank you, Jay. Well done. Mark Nyes, you should be behind Hugh. So, Hugh, take it away.
For a long time, for actually several years, I had toyed with the idea that I wanted to make a router for the lathe, and I know it's been done before, and it's not a new concept. However, in every issue of the American Woodturner, there was an article on it, and I looked at it and I thought, well, damn it, I'm finally going to do it. And so I scouted around the shop, and I was fortunate enough to have a metal post that would fit into the banjo. And I was very pleased with myself, made a platform, stuck it in, and then I realized it was too tall. And so I couldn't lower it. So I had to take it off and then cut down the metal post with a hacksaw, which took me a while. Because what I hadn't really appreciated before, that the post in banjo has a limited passage. In other words, because it hits the handle that you lock it with. Anyway, so I cut it down, and then I put it back up, and it was still too tall because I put a block on the bottom of the plate there, and so I had to take it off and do that again. Then I realized that what I was really having to do was to align the cutting edge of the burr on the axis of your lathe, and that's the difficult part, because you can make it too tall. You're getting it too short if you've got a short stump on your banjo. That can make it difficult. So anyway, it took me a while to do that. I would have chosen, if anybody looks at the article, I would have chosen to have a band of pliable metal going on the covering the motor. So then this is just a little bulky to do it, but it's okay. And so It was a fun project, and as you can see on the left side of this picture, you can see those are the grooves that I made, and then you couldn't see them unless I darkened them. So I darkened them just so that you could see them. So, fun project. Okay. That's what I say.
So you and Andrew Baxter ought to have a conversation, because he would love to have seen what you're doing. Fluting jigs is something he's worked with in the past too. So what is your application now that you have the fixture? What's your project in the future?
That I have yet to dream up. So I just knew I wanted to do this project, and I knew Andrew Baxter had one of these, and he'd shown it for years. And I thought one day I'm going to do it, and finally I got it.
Don't let the guys in the flat woodworking furniture making department know about this. They will be over to you for contract work on fluting chair and table legs.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Well done, well done. And it's a complicated fixture, and I'm sure you put a lot of work into that. Mark, you're next, and our East Coast person right after lunch, Doc Bula, will be next.
Okay, there's my piece. This is called Bowl of Bubbles. And I was inspired to make this piece. There's a French guy, Vivian Grandolet, who was at the Portland AAW Symposium. And anyway, this is a mesquite wood piece, and Carl Mercer from BAWA gave me the mesquite. It's about a foot diameter, I guess, and about 8 or 10 inches tall. It's all one piece. And I hollowed it out through the bottom because I didn't want it to crack or move or anything. So the walls are fairly thick, but it's hollow. And I did the carved hemispheres with router bits. I have 2 of them, a 1-inch and a 2-inch, and a drill press. And with a lot of clamping, I was able to make all those carved hemispheres. And then I bleached the top. And
that had to be very difficult to carve that out with the drill press.
Well, I learned all the techniques to make sure the drill was in the chuck all the way, and to make sure my table was super tight. All those things that cause vibration, I tried to minimize. So it took a little while to optimize things. But clamping the piece to the drill press table is the hardest part, because you can't have any chatter or anything like a wood turning. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I would not have thought that was one piece.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. So Mike Boulat is next. So speak very loudly, because he's coming to us from, about 3,000 miles away?
Yes, that's me.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you guys. So good to see all of you. Thank you for the invite. About a year ago, the club had a meeting that concentrated on coring devices. The club has a McNaughton that they rent out to its members. Another member brought in the one-way. I brought in my old woodcut, and another member brought in the new woodcut that he just purchased. So I cored out. This is Bradford pear. The tree came down that month, just before the view. So I cored out 2 from 2 pieces. And about 2 weeks ago, I said, hey, I haven't been in their shop in a while. Let's see what they're doing. They ovaled tremendously. The biggest one is about 11 inches across. The blank started out about 14 inches. So I'm glad I made them thick enough. But it's Bradford pear, and it's just a simple mixture of beeswax and mineral oil with a little bit of carnauba on it. So I had fun doing it.
It looks great. Mike, you mentioned the old and new wood fast coring systems. Is there a change?
Yeah, the new one is a little bit meatier. It has a support for the blade similar to the one-way, and it costs about $150 more.
Oh, that makes great purchase then, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm very happy with mine.
Good. Well, thank you guys. Next month when we do the show and tell, I'm sure we're going to have more than 10 pieces. Jack Galletti, have you ever come back? Did we ever get you? Hello, Jack. Are you around? I'm sorry, he never made the connection. It's unfortunate. But next month we'll be able to do a little bit more. So now, one more thing. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Richard, who's going to talk to you about our program and how that's going to work out. Richard.
Okay. We have should have John Cobb standing by. Are you there, John?
All right, we're going to have little issues as I change from different Wi-Fi networks as we go around here. Rick, you want me to start now, or do you have more to say, or what would you like?
I don't have anything more to say, so why don't you go ahead?
You're on, John.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick tour of my shop and the drawing room where I dry pieces, and then the storage area where I do long-term storage of bowls for my production work. So we're going to start out here in the driveway, which is where my shop is. So I'm going to switch the camera around, and there we go. There's the driveway. Down here, redwood and cypress that is drying, and my wife was wondering when it's going to disappear. And then here we start kind of where my carport is. There's some redwood came down recently. I'm playing around with a sculpture possibility or potential firewood. This is various burls. Box elder burl here, walnut burl there. Cypress that I'm making some large vessels that we'll see in a moment. And there's some camphor burl that I'm trying to figure out what to do without being really offensive to my wife's olfactory membranes. She hates the smell. So I'll back up a little bit. Here's my shop. It is a converted carport that when we got the house was just covered in screen mesh. So anything in here rusted. So I ended up putting windows in it, and there's a roll-up door. So when I'm in here, basically, everything is exposed to the outside, which is really nice when it's dry and warm. And when it's wet and cold, it's not so nice. And one of the nice things it allows me to do is hopefully get rid of dust a little easier, although that is proving to be a little more difficult than projects that are going on right now. I have 2 box elder burl hollow forms that I'm working on. This one I am finishing with an oil-based polyurethane or tung oil, and this one has a water-based polyurethane that I'm working on. Both of them have these little tiny pinprick holes that I'm trying to fill over time. And that just takes putting on coats, sanding them off, putting on coats, sanding them off. Getting out a little bit of black CA and filling dot lines. And so it's just an arduous process. I think it's pretty, it has some really nice, the red weave going through it. This has very light red in it. When we had our teachers meeting, we talked about, well, is the red going to last long? And in all the studies that I've done, it doesn't. I think depending on how much sunlight it gets, it will disappear over time. If you keep it in a room that does not have windows, it can last for quite a while. So in terms of my setup, this is my one-way lathe. And so within basically a pivot of 1 foot, I can access bowl gouges and scrapers. And then there are more bowl gouges down there that I put into handles. Variety of flutes and grind for depending if I want a bottom feeder versus the rough and gouge that I use for the bulk of the work for roughing out bowls. And then here are the hollowing tools that I use. Big ones that can rip a shoulder out, down to small ones for little teeny vessels. Just kind of a whole range. These are the original Tchaikovsky tools that I made that I actually put into handles. Mike Tchaikovsky discourages that, thinks you should use actually handles that you can swap tools in and out, but I did that, and I've been using those for the better part of 8 years, and I think I've never replaced the tips on them. The carbide tips just keep going, I guess, until I hit a rock. So getting back to the way production works, in the driveway, I will cut everything with a chainsaw around. I'll come over here to the collection of those fun tools. I have, what is it? Looks like I'm up to 2, 4, I think 5 chainsaws. Don't tell my wife. But what's important is that you have the right tool for the right job. If you have too small a chainsaw for the log you're cutting, you're going to take risks. If you have too big a chainsaw for the log you're cutting, you're going to end up taking risks. So I have a couple smaller electric saws in the 16 to 18 inch range, and then the other ones are gas powered from 16 up to 36 inches. They seem to do the trick. I shouldn't be doing anything bigger than that. So once the blank is cut relatively round, out in the driveway comes into here, and here's where I'll do the roughing out and coring. Once a bowl has then dried, or if I'm going to take it all the way to thin, I'll go over to the shorter lathe, and this is a Powermatic 2020, and so I can stand right in front of the lathe while the piece is on here. So whether it's a bowl or a hollow form, I'm right in front of it. I have great access to everything. I can work on the side if I want. I can work right in front. And this gives me incredible flexibility and comfort for working on a piece. For all hollow form hollowings, I will stand right here. And so whether it's a small piece or big piece, everything happens there. The reason why I got the small lathe is because I was doing hollowing and also coring and working on bowls on the back side of this lathe, and it basically shot shavings all over the shop. I have shavings way up here and up on the walls and in the lights, and it was just a monster pain to clean. And so this way, with this lathe set up, all the shavings come out and either kind of towards the bandsaw or drop straight down. And I'll put plastic sheeting up when I'm doing a lot of work, and that helps kind of keep the wood shavings and all the stuff in this area. So then a 14-inch Laguna bandsaw. I try not to do too much of green wood with that because it messes up the blade and the wheel so badly. But it does come in handy quite a bit. I have been doing some sculptural pieces, and so with a bunch of dried walnut that I got, so I've had a spindle stand or oscillating, I'm not sure what that's called, but been working on that. Here are the pieces. A couple other pieces. There's 3 bowls that I was just working on yesterday, doing the sanding I need to get the foot done. But a walnut bowl, this is madrone, and this is a crotch of a bay tree. And so they're all done on the back side, or on the front side, and now I just need to remove the back side, and they're ready for oiling. That's pretty much what happens in here. Oh, sanding. The other thing that is within 2 steps of my central lathe station are my sanding discs. And this is something that I learned from David Ellsworth. And so all of these are some form of foam-backed pads. And I use predominantly 5-inch discs. So these are PSA, so they're sticky-backed, and these are Velcro-backed. And I will use that for the vast majority of the hollow forms and of the bowls that I make. If I need to go to smaller discs, I have a range of 3-inch and then 2-inch discs, and then those discs would be in there that most of the time I'll cut those myself. But what's important about sandpaper is that you get really good sandpaper and treat it like it's free. And so what I try to do is get really good sandpaper cheap, and eBay is my primary source. So periodically there's going to be some machine shop or somebody that is dumping, a huge supply of really good sandpaper. So this stuff is made by Sia. It's really, really good aluminum oxide, and I have Abernet here and 3M. They make a really good purple aluminum oxide disc. So I encourage you, if you're going to get sandpaper, get the best stuff you can get and treat it like you get it for free. More wood that needs to be made into hollow forms. So that's what happens up here. The next stop we're going to do is head into the house where I do finishing work. Are any questions while we move up there?
Hey, John?
Yes.
Could you try rotating your phone 90 degrees? Might give us a
yes,
little bigger, yeah.
Better.
Yeah, if you could do that.
Got
Yeah,
it.
actually-
And by the way, go ahead, Jim.
No, nothing. Never mind.
By the way, what's happening over here, we're not showing. That has winemaking and winemaking operations and a ceramics wheel in there, both of which haven't been used for a few years. So I need to try to get rid of that stuff. That's what's here. Any other questions? All right. So now, let's see. I gotta switch networks here. Give me 1 second.
John, can you hear me?
I think he's in between networks now.
Okay, I just was going to tell him he's doing an excellent job.
Do you have me back? Can you hear me?
Yes, great.
All right, good. All right, how are we going in the house?
You have a question, John.
Oh, shoot.
John, can you hear
Question.
me? It's Steve. That was just an excellent tour of.
I didn't get it. Is there a question?
Apparently not. Sorry.
Shit.
I didn't
hear that.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Whoever's clock is chiming, please mute.
All right. Can you guys see? Do you see Joey the dog?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. I'll keep going. I think somehow I've lost you guys. Okay. We're going to go downstairs. The first stop is going to be a display area that I use. And so this holds pieces that periodically rotate from here into galleries. And so up top are some large hollow forms made out of alder, and then camphor, walnut. This is some of the ebonized work that I do. And then this is redwood and this sort of other different pieces. The next thing we're going to do is head into where I do photography. And so this is my photography setup. So I have a thunder gray background. I just bought a roll of paper on eBay. And so if it gets dirty, you just put up a new roll. These are some bowls that are in the process of finishing. I was doing a little study on warping. So these bowls are all turned thin first time. And so they are allowed to warp. And this is Tony's carob that we're going to end up giving to the guy who is cutting all the trees. This is nice. Another carob bowl that had basically ended up being a natural edge carob bowl with a little bit of bark in it. This is bay laurel. And so these were all remarkably well behaved. If you can kind of tell, there isn't a whole lot of warping on these three. And then you get to, this is madrone. And I had an inquiry for a nested set, and I had just recently done a whole bunch of madrone. And some of them I actually turned thin just to see what would happen. And indeed, they really warp like crazy. The largest bowl is the outer one of this one is 16 inches, and it's 16 inches in diameter originally, and that's what it is currently from this edge, from end grain to end grain, but it's now down to under 12 inches side to side.
Wow.
So it moved 25%. But actually, what I like about this is I've made a nested set of bowls that are now oval and consistent shape. So I actually like that. This is another project going on. An interior decorator up in Seattle called in. They said they wanted a large platter, something in the 17 to 18-inch range, about 2 to 3 inches high, and they wanted a natural edge on it. And just putting all those things together, just how do I do all that? And so a person gave me a chunk of a slab that was originally supposed to be for a table, and it was the crotch of a sycamore tree. And so he didn't really want it, it had cracked, and so it indeed it varied between 2 and 3 inches thick, depending on how much it warped. And it had the crotch section in it, which was the two sides of the side. Now, so it's ended up having beautiful grain. I like the way it came out. The decorator wants it jet black and matte. So unfortunately, this one is going to be dyed black. I'm having a hard time getting to that point. So I'm living with it for a little bit right now. And then it's probably this week it's going to get dyed black. All right, in here are storage for finished pieces, and also where I'll do some of the finishing work back here. So I'm going to go sideways on you. I got an inquiry for hollow forms. A company wanted 35 hollow forms for a corporate event that was going to take place, May 25th, in exactly 1 month. And lo and behold, it was canceled because they can't get all their clients together. So I have the better part of 50 hollow forms on top here that aren't going anywhere this month or next month. So they'll be delivered out somewhere else. And down below, there's more hollow forms. So I don't know, by the end of this virus outbreak, I'm going to have a ton. But some of these are neat. These two right here are walnut that had mistletoe in them. And mistletoe, when you turn it, depending on how big Tony, maybe you can correct me, are those tendrils or the part of the mistletoe that grows into the wood, they go away when you turn it. They dry, shrink, and end up being voids. And so you end up with a lot of warping and distortions, but neat colors. Moving over to the side here, these are tall vessels that are most likely going to be ebonized. These were from really old cypress wood, and so these are the top ones over here and here and there. And so they range anywhere from, I guess, looks like 8 inches up to about 20 inches. Down here are all of the bowls that I once turned. These were cores of bigger sections. So these are madrone, and that looks to be bay and carob wood there. Moving over here, for when I go to galleries, I'll have usually my own boxes. So the recent show in San Francisco came down, so I pulled things out. There's another show that's going on in San Rafael where they had the opening event, and theoretically the closing event was last Friday, and the public has yet to see the show. It's up, but it's a group show that no one's been in. But a variety of different types of pieces that I'm working on. So hollow forms here, and then some platforms that I was playing around with. These are some chainsaw carved vessels. Those two right there. I have a larger one upstairs. This is ebonized redwood and cypress. And then more vessels. And then these are some of the samples of the dyed black platters for the designer up in Seattle. So I'm going to rotate over here. And so this is the ping pong table. Now, fraternities play beer pong. I play something different here. But this is the way I finish hollow forms. And so they'll be upside down here as they dry. And then they kind of move their way over. And then they'll start the finishing process all along here. And so whether it's water-based poly or oil-based poly or tung oil, it all happens here. Charlie Saul asked me, he said, if I ever dried anything with silica. And so he found a source. Normally silica is kind of expensive, but he said, check out this stuff and you can get it on Amazon. And I'm going to go down here and zoom in. Here it is. It's actually kitty litter. And so I think the Amazon guy thinks I have about 500 cats, and I ordered quite a bit of kitty litter. And so what I have done is I got a whole bunch of pieces. We'll see if we can fix the zoom here. But sorry, I've got a whole bunch of pieces. And so what I did is every day I was taking measurements as the pieces were drying. So this is one of the tests that's going on right now. So it's one of the madrone bowls that I boiled. And so that is out of the kitty litter. And so that's number A2. And this is the container. That's what the kitty litter looks like. And this is bowl number A1. And so they get measured every day. And so it was interesting. Then I just tuck it back in there, cover it up with litter, put the top on. And so for this process, what I found out was interesting that kitty litter started out for the first couple of days being a little bit faster than air drying. But then over the course of about 2.5 weeks, those 1-inch bowls, let's see, actually it's more, well, no, it's been 2.5 weeks. They are just about dry for a 1-inch bowl. So that's pretty remarkable for speed of drying. What's interesting also is if you look at this is a madrone similar to the ones we saw in the other room, and this has not worked that much. So you can see the impact of boiling does have a significant difference. It does make a significant difference when you're looking at warping, certainly for madrone. Okay, so I'm going to go upstairs now, and you're going to lose me. So I'm going to flip around here for a second. And if you see my other camera, it says John Cobb Part 2.
Is the staircase the only entry to that area down there?
Pardon?
I wonder if that staircase is the only entry to that huge body of work, a beautiful, huge body of work.
It tried to come in and grab it. Yeah, it is there is a staircase to the outside behind it, but that's the way I get down. So now when I actually rough out bowls, I'm going to just give you an idea where I am. So the carport or the shop is way down there. I got to carry all the wet bowls up here, and they go out here to the deck. And so they will sit under this oak tree for about a week, as long as it's not too hot. And they'll lose probably 20 to 25% of their water weight right there. And then they get carried down below. So I'm going to go to my other camera. As soon as you lose.
Yep.
Are you using a camera or an iPhone?
He's using 2 phones.
2 phones.
They're Android phones.
Okay. It's really good.
And he should be picking up phone number 2 pretty soon. You there, John?
Yep, there it is. Yes.
Okay. There we go. I'm going to give you an idea of where this is. So I just ran down this little path here that goes to my house. this is the house. Oh, 1 second.
What a great property. Jeez.
John, we do not have audio, but we do have picture.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the house is on a big downward slope. So when we were doing the construction, this was going to be all exposed. And it's like, well, I want it, somewhat enclosed. So they did that. And so this was basically a dirt slab in here. So it's a little bit hard to access, but it's unheated and it has some vents in here. And so this I decided to make, okay, this is perfect for drawing bowls. So I put in some racks, and so this is carob, and this is all carob from the last time we did carob, and some walnut and all that. This is walnut here, and then I started filling in. This is bay and camphor, and then up on top, get away from the light. Then you start seeing that's black acacia, walnut, and then you can see it goes on for a little ways down here.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So,
What a huge body of work.
And well, this is the problem. That's why I need a lot of sandpaper. And Steve, maybe you can come over and help do some sanding. So,
can you turn your camera sideways?
Oh yeah, there we go. So this is more kind of a lot of the natural edge stuff. We can start with a few hollow forms up here. I was playing around with different ways of drawing things. The bigger stuff is down below. You'll get 20-inch bowls down there. What's funny about those is those don't go anywhere. No one wants to buy a 20-inch bowl unless they have a big horse. So redwood, madrone, and actually, Tony, this is some of the most recent carob that came in. So then what we got going over here is, this is elm, and that's red gum eucalyptus, or no, sorry, that's ironbark eucalyptus, with a little bit of walnut and acacia up there. Back over here is old growth bay and camphor. And then going back down here, the most recent load of madrone that came in, and some older madrone that I'm letting out very sparingly. This was an interesting story. Back during the Santa Rosa fire, I got a call from a firewood guy, and he says, I think I got something for you. He sent me this picture of a totally burned log, but there was a section of it that was exposed that had been ripped off, and it looked dark and figured, and so we didn't know what it was. He said, if you want it, you got to get here and by tomorrow, or else the table guys are going to come and slab it. So I ran up there, and indeed it appears that it was walnut, beautifully figured, and so I cut it all up, and it made 75 beautiful bowls, and those are ready to go now. 3 days later, I got a call from the arborist who had brought that in going, hey, do you still have that? Because the owner wants it back because he wants a table out of it.
Oh, no.
It was like, I'm going to make him a really nice bowl. But yeah, unfortunately, it turns out maybe, I think he had some other logs and all that, but it's just beautifully figured walnut. But what was fascinating about it is that it went through the Santa Rosa fire, totally burned out. And it burned 1/8 of an inch in. Wood is so wet, and the percentage of water is so high that very little of the actual wood gets burned, even going through a fire. So just to give you a little more perspective, this is kind of what the drawing room looks like. And so, yes, I think I have a problem. If there's a 12-step program, I probably start that. But what it enabled me to do, I had a couple customers, and so they always wanted to have bowls. And so they would just tell me, okay, here's what my inventory is. And so I would look through it and say, okay, we need 12-inch, 14-inch acacia, we need 3-inch or 12-inch elm, and I could make any size out of any wood and deliver that to them. And so they really liked that. They didn't ask me for a specific delivery. They just said, bring me. And so I would look at what's selling. And so there were times when elm sold well, then other times when madrone sold well, and walnut. And so you can always keep a nice selection of wood in the store as opposed to always delivering just walnut or just one type of wood. So this is kind of it. Anybody want to come over and sand? I would love to have you.
Hey, John, it's Tony here, but just a question on the, I know last time I was there was a little bit of problem with mold down in the basement. Have you had more problems, or have you solved any kind of mold problem?
Yes, actually, that's a great thing. Yeah, I was boiling wood, and one winter, I got a bunch of, and this is elm, and I boiled it, and I also had some really nice maple that was beautifully figured, and big leaf maple. And I boiled it, let it sit up on the deck for a little while, brought it in here, and then within about 3 weeks, I had a giant mold forest. And so I had to turn all of the maple to get that out of there. And it turns out with elm, it's not a problem. That is just on the surface. It doesn't discolor. But yeah, so I have gotten very, very cautious on boiling, and especially any wood that's white or light colored. You are highly likely to get mold. And so learning from Brad Adams that in the wintertime, you actually don't even need to anchor seal. And so I am roughing out bowls and bringing them right down here without any sealant on them and not boiling them. So the only thing I will boil is madrone. And then I let that sit up on the deck that was about a week and a half before the next rain. And then brought it down here, and then they've been behaving just fine. But yeah, boiling should be used cautiously, or any kind of volume, you just have to be, I would discourage it. For one-off pieces, you can do it, and just watch out that if there's not air and light around it, it's going to bolt.
Hey, John, this is Bob over at West Bay. A suggestion or two. I have a storage under my house. It's a crawl space. It's below grade. It has moisture. At one point in time, I put a house fan on one end of the storage so that I can pull some gentle airflow through there. So all the water coming out of the bowls is basically adding to the humidity in there. If you can change the air in there, it looks like you've got plenty of walls exposed to the outside, so you might consider an attic fan or a house fan or a square box or something to just move it and put a switch on it so you can turn it off whenever you don't want it. But
yeah, I actually have decent airflow in here. If you can see right there, that's a vent open to the outside, and then all along this wall down here, there are vents to the outside. So you probably still could pull more water out, but this is really exposed to the outside air in terms of temperature and humidity. So I think I'm actually getting pretty good airflow through here by having these vents that are at different altitudes. So when it's warm, hot air is going to be flowing out here, pulling in cold air from down below. But it's a good point. Certainly, if you have a space that's sealed, you want to make sure you get airflow.
Great. Another thought or suggestion, I've been using desiccant for drying, and I haven't tried the cat litter, but I put desiccant in a closed chamber, and then the rest of it's airspace, and I have a lot of pieces in there. I haven't submerged any of the pieces in the drying agent like the desiccant like you have, but I just keep it in the airspace, and theoretically the desiccant is pulling the moisture out of the air in the dead space. So I'll use a cooler and put maybe 2 inches of desiccant at the bottom. Sometimes I'll throw a pillowcase on top of it so that my product isn't even in contact with the desiccant, and then I'll seal it. And I find that the first few weeks when everything's wet, I don't even bother because the desiccant will just get ruined. It'll suck up moisture so fast. But after the initial drying, after it drops 10 to 20% ambient, I'll do the final finishing in the desiccant, and it pulls the that last 5 or 10% of moisture out really fast. So you might try, some different variations on how you're using. If the cat litter acts the same way. Also, I'm putting my desiccant in an oven and drying it out. It's reusable. I don't know if the cat litter is, but you might try it.
Yeah, I think it's all the same stuff. So all good points. So the next study you got to do is take a piece that hasn't been boiled, a 1-inch piece, and put it. I guess seal one with anchor seal, and then put the other one in the desiccant, and see how that goes, and run those side by side.
I also noticed your tenon are still on most of the holoforms in your finishing stage. When do you remove the tenon?
So what I do, I don't know if I have any down here, but I create a tenon nub that actually is inside my base. But so this allows me to put it on the lathe and hold it with pin jaws. And so if I need to resand or if I'm going to put finish on it, I can do that. So I can really finish the whole piece except for the bottom. And then it's only the last stages of finishing will I then remove that tenon. So I would, yeah, so it does not impact the finishing of the piece at all. I will do that. I will take it down to this size a day after I have turned the whole piece. So the drawing actually goes, it's uniform, and except for that one piece down there. So I haven't had any cracking associated with that little tenon that's like that. But this allows me more versatility when I'm drawing and finishing.
That's a great idea. John, this is Steve Smyers. Can you hear me?
Yep, hear you just fine.
It's been a massive, massive amount of work. This is extraordinary. Do you have assistants, or are you doing all this yourself?
Well, I have a dog in the shop with me who's there periodically. So no, it's this is me. I don't join a health club very often, so this is
No,
good
you
work.
wouldn't have to. I wonder if anyone else besides me is. I sprayed my molded bowls with Zoom mold spray from Ace Hardware. I don't know if it killed it instantly and it never came back.
Wow, that's a good idea.
It might be, worked for me,
Yeah,
but I don't have near. I mean, this inventory is just extraordinary. Your whole operation is just so wonderful.
Yeah.
John,
so now
Jim,
yes, Jim, go.
Yeah, I got a question for you. So this is where you are now. What step would you approach next? I mean, this is where your work is. This is how it's flowing now. You've got this plan. Where would you like to move to? I mean, what would be your next step in development as a professional turner?
Interesting. So I'm working on some more of the off lathe product. So that was the sculptural things, and exploring that area. So that's been interesting. I'm doing some combination of sculptures with bowls that. So that seems to be a little bit. Let me switch camera views here, and you can see me talk.
Can the UPS truck get up that narrow driveway?
Yes, the UPS guy does come a little too frequently, I think, and it was related to the Amazon guy. Yeah, so I think it's doing it. Just keep pushing to do something different. And so this break where customers are non-existent is a nice time to venture out and think of what is it that you like, and what's something different that you haven't done, and to try different things.
So what's been pushing you, the market or self-guided creativity?
No, it's self-guided, and that I make what I like to make, and I work with people that I like to work with. I've had some customers that were a little slightly unethical, that had some issues paying, that weren't honest with me, and so I cut them off. And yes, I didn't sell as much as probably could have, but I work with people that I like, and so that part of it is enjoyable. And yeah, the sculptural pieces, they haven't sold much, so I might be getting in trouble with my wife as we see more of those in the house, or I'm gonna have a really big bonfire at some point.
Sculpture is the hardest thing to sell.
Yeah, who was that who said that?
Do you deliver pieces or ship them?
Right. So the customers that I have over in Berkeley and in Mill Valley, San Francisco, I hand deliver orders, and yeah, it's the personal contact, talking with them, and they get to know me, and basically my job is to do their job for them. You know, what is it that is going to sell well, and want them to put in an order for the following month.
Yeah.
And I watch what they sell and what is selling, and then if something sits there for 2 months or 3 months or whatever it is, I say that's getting old. Let's swap it out, and I'll change it for a different one. And if you do that, then they're not stuck with inventory they don't want. They don't have to put it on the sale rack, and everybody wins in that scenario.
John, and one more question. This is Jim again. Talking to Mike Mahoney, he keeps talking about the market is East Coast, that there's just nobody out here in the West buys much wood. If you want to sell a lot of product, you go East. Have you pushed your market out beyond places you can drive to?
No, and doing that is that you have to almost get to the Mahoney point where you can sell thousands of bowls, because in order to go to those big shows, where in Philadelphia or New York, you're talking about, all in probably a $20,000 to $30,000 trip for a week, and that's a lot of bowls to cover that expense. And you have to be willing to work super hard and do a hell of a lot of sanding that I don't like doing. So
looks like you can do it once anyway, right?
Yeah, I could certainly supply it if I wanted to, but that starts taking some of the fun out of the game.
Yeah.
So I'd rather work on the local avenues here, and really I need to work more on marketing and getting my pieces and going and talking to people, because when you go around stores, it's very hard to find a really beautiful salad bowl or a hollow form, and it just means that the market hasn't seen these, and people aren't willing to give it a try just because they don't know it's out there. Mm-hmm. So it's incumbent upon me to actually do the work to actually make it, to do the marketing side.
Do you have any sales literature or brochures?
I don't use brochures, so I'll go in generally carrying stock with me, and so because that's really what they want to see. I'll make an appointment ahead of time. I'll send pictures of what I've done, websites and Instagram pages, and then go in and bring the product, and because that's ultimately what sells. And what's really interesting is that if the client is interesting, normally what you bring them, they say, okay, I'll take that, and that. And when I was just bringing in samples, it's like, whoa, then let me come back and I'll bring you some. But it's, the decorator market needs wood product. They need things, but the hard part is getting it to them and figuring out a way that they can present it to their client. And so it's just working more hand in hand with decorators.
John, how do you figure out pricing?
Pardon?
How do you figure out pricing?
Aha, that's a very good thing. Pricing is very dependent upon the location. If you are in an area or in a store that has high-end product, you can charge high prices. If you're in a store that the average knickknack is $25, you're not going to sell a $400 bowl. So I try to price my work so I'm in the $25 to $50 an hour if I'm working fast and hard and efficient. That's what I try to get on a wholesale basis. Holoforms, if I can get it, or I do charge more for. That doesn't seem to be an elasticity issue about, oh, your price is too high, you're not going to sell them. There's just the market is pretty small for holoforms. So
use.
What's that?
So you can't use the, people don't have an excuse to buy a holoform because they can't really use it like a bowl. The bowls probably outsell the holoforms 10 to 1 or so.
Easily, yeah, they do. And then and the cheaper holoforms sell pretty well, and that things that are in the $100 to $200 range on a retail basis seem to go okay, and the ebonized pieces seem to go okay also in the $50 to $200 range. But there is a decorator market out there that is high-end, that a decorator would like to place a piece that's $500 to $1,500 wholesale, and because he's getting a significant markup as well. So working with those people can be certainly a very good avenue for distributing product.
Well, I wonder if your wife's going to let you take over any more of the house.
Well, I'm going to say that if that would happen, I would say there's a good chance the dogs and I are sleeping outside. So I think I need to actually give up more space in the house than I can to taking it over. So
it's just an incredibly great looking operation. I love that.
Hey, John, it's Tony here again. Can you say something about the chips and the sawdust and stuff? And I mean, with all the bowls that we're seeing here, and I know that that's kind of a problem to what you do with that.
Yes. I'll tell you what, that could be a, let me go outside here. And I'm going to walk along the bottom of the house, and I'm going to show you how to getting rid of chips is a significant problem when you're doing a large amount of volume. And so when I'm roughing out bowls, I'll have anywhere from 4 to 8 garbage cans full of chips. If you do that a couple days in a row, it adds up over time. And so you got to figure out what to do with that. So either you have a large dumpster, or you have 14 green cans so you can fill.
Hill?
So I live on a very big hill. And so this will be a good segue to the end of this. I'm probably going to drop you again. So I'm going to switch camera views. Go over here, and you'll see me back on this camera in a moment if I lose you. By the way, what I've done also on this.
Yeah, we just lost you. So John stepped far enough away from the house that his router is out of range.
I'll bet that's
So can I ask Tony a question?
Go.
Yes,
so,
you may.
If you throw a lot of chips out there, isn't that termite food? I mean,
Yeah, what you're seeing now from John, incidentally, is the way that he's sort of spreading out along the hill. And to answer your question, Peter, the difficulty is the thickness. If you can spread it at 6 inches or less, you're not going to have problems with termites because it'll decompose fast enough that it actually improves the soil. You just don't want to throw it over the trunks of your trees and stuff like that.
Like on the left here.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm trying to keep it away from around there. But yes, this is what I've done. So the part of the workout program is that I have roughly 50 steps that I put in. My landscape guy says, "You want me to put in steps down to nowhere?" And there's like, yeah, I actually do. And so steps where literally, I think it's stairs. I'll go sideways here, kind of
get an idea of this is where the chips go.
Yeah, we've lost your picture. Oh, there we go. We have a screen capture, but with no motion.
You know,
just a little
John,
too far away. Go ahead, Ann.
John, I was going to say you need more friends with chickens, but you clearly will never know enough people.
Kim, how many chickens do you have? And I will bring you over chips anytime you want. Just tell me where to put the dump truck.
My neighbor has the chickens and she's getting all of my shavings. Don't bring the dump truck.
It's already on the way. Sorry. You know, that's, don't worry.
Yeah.
I'll just drop it in your driveway.
My husband will appreciate that. Thank you.
John, let me cut in here and say, I recognize that you put a lot of time in preparing for this, and with 2 sets of routers and connection issues and so on. I really appreciate you taking on the program of being our first rural disconnected not disconnected, we actually are connected meeting. Thank you so much for giving us a tour of your shop and what you do and how you do it. And for our first meeting, we had a total of, right now, it's gone down a little bit. It's down to 66. People are beginning to drop off, but we had 67. And the reason the one dropped off is I turned off my other computer. It was me. But thank you so much. It was great. And Richard, for working with you. I know that John and Richard spent some time yesterday or the day before doing a practice run on this. So this wasn't all contemporaneous. It was a little bit of planning and work went into prepping it. Appreciate it. One thing I would like to do, because we have a little time for those who want to stay around, any feedback in terms of the process that we've gone through for this meeting. Now, next month, it's a formal presentation from a person who does this for a living. But comments, folks? Anybody for what we've done, how we've done it, things we could do differently or better? I'd appreciate hearing.
So I have a comment.
Okay, go.
This is Pete Nakatani. And
Pete.
What I was going to say is that, you know, sometimes people just can't make it to the meetings. So even the regular meetings, and I don't know how difficult this is for David and, you know, Richard or whoever, but if you know, the normal video that we're looking at during the meeting, if you attach that to a Zoom meeting, then you could have a lot of people to, you know, maybe they were ill with a regular cold, not some stupid viral whatever nightmare. But it allows other people, you know, just to see.
Yeah, we talked about that. Dave and I were planning on trying to see if there's some way to interconnect. And then we lost access to the regular meeting site due to the school shutdown. So at the present time, that's not an option, but it's still possible. We have the Zoom capabilities now. And what you're saying is all we have to do is take our microphone and cameras and connect in to that feed. I think it's very doable in the future to transmit as well as attend. We're moving. Dave?
Jim, just to come over the top, this entire thing is being recorded. So after we hang up, it'll go back and convert everything for me. And then we'll have to get together and look at it, Richard, you and me. And then it'll be edited and we'll put it online as well.
So this goes online, meaning onto Dave Bentley's website and to the Bay Area Woodturners website. So it becomes accessible for people who didn't sign in today. Good. Any other comments? Thank you, Peter.
So, Jim, I have a question to Andy first. So I'm a novice turner, and one of the things that I'm sort of interested in, that was just an extraordinary presentation and everything, but it raises so many questions for me as a novice about, I mean, I don't even understand the first thing about boiling wood. Never heard of that expression before. So the question I have would be, is there a forum in here where I can ask my novice questions without taking up time of people who had that question answered, 15,000 times?
That's a good point. As a club, we do not have that open workshop or open forum process in place, but it's a good thought. If it's basic turning, learning the various basic skills of spindle, bowl, and hollow forms, then we're working in that direction in terms of creating videos and training pieces that you can look at and work with. But that unique question about how long do you boil madrone? Do you put any chemicals in the water with it and things like that? We don't have a process to be able to dialogue about things like that yet.
Let me offer a suggestion, if I may,
Yeah, Dave.
in response, which is on Facebook, if you use it, there are at least 6 wood turning affinity groups. And I post and answer people's questions or comment on people. And people routinely post questions. What do I do about this? Or how do I boil wood? Or why does, and get very constructive responses. And so I would encourage you for those kinds of questions. There is no too much a beginner question. You might
David, could you put a list of those together for us? And I will see that it gets sent out to the whole membership that here's other ways that you can reach out.
I'll send it to you, Jim, when we're done.
And I'll send it out.
Sure.
That's great. What else, John?
And if you any questions, certainly about my presentation, feel free to send me a note, an email, whatnot, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
So, John, this is Dave Bentley. Just a quick comment for you. I was monitoring the people coming in and leaving as your presentation went on, and you kept the full audience for the entire thing. The only one that left was Jim Rogers' #2 camera. So that's extraordinary.
So I'm half as interested as before.
Yeah, and your presentation was amazing. I kept listening to Steve Smyers talk about your body of work, and it just never ended. It just went on and on and on. So wow, it's amazing. It was. Thank you very much.
That's not a problem. Actually, another idea for send any questions, and then when we do the write up for the newsletter, I'm happy to answer them in the newsletter. That way, everybody can hear the questions and see the answers.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else have a comment or suggestion? Otherwise, we're going to have a conclusion to our meeting a little earlier.
Well, yes. One thing, like when Ellsworth was there, and I had actually asked Ellsworth, his backhand was bouncing a lot, when he was turning,
mm-hmm.
And so I asked him, and he just goes, "Oh, I'm just following it," and we don't know if that's real or not. But I had like 3 other people go, I was wondering that myself, but I didn't want to ask. Mm-hmm. So I think it was Andy who asked the boiling question. There are probably many other people within the group that hear John go boiling. And, in this case, it's literally he's taking a bowl, throwing it in water, and boiling it for 3 hours, or depending on the thickness. But the only silly question is the one that I can't answer is one of the comments that I've heard. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should ask questions. The key in our remote meetings like this with John was we were concerned that everybody would have a question and all want to try to ask it at the same time, thus creating confusion on the hookup. But I think what we did was we all kind of held back just a little bit, being cautious about that. So I know other people had questions too. John, what about that piece on the left, that kind of thing? I find that we did this when we were at Bob Bly's meeting the other day, is people have a tendency to hold back on these videos once they recognize how it works. And this may open up a little bit more in the future as we become more comfortable working in this format. It represents a management task then.
People need to realize there's no such thing as a stupid question. There may be stupid answers, but not stupid questions.
I got some of those for you, Mike.
I think over here we're used to a couple of different formats. I think Mike Lanahan is a member of BAWA, and
yes,
for Silicon Valley, once a month, maybe twice a month, they hold a sawdust session, which isn't a show and tell. It isn't a presentation. It's a just come with your questions. What are your challenges? What are you working on? You can't figure out how to do it. When I first joined West Bay, I would go over to Jim Laughlin's house, and sawdust sessions were there. And I was coming with, hey, I want to learn hollowing. I want to learn coring. And a sawdust session can easily be a breakout session on Zoom. So you don't necessarily have to do them once a month on a certain date, but you might put together another, like we heard at our last meeting, we're thinking maybe we can do this 3 times a month, because one of them could just be a short sawdust session where we're just asking questions and, you know, dealing with projects that we're currently working on. So just a thought.
Okay, I made a note. That's a good idea.
I've been really wondering a lot about the oval bowl. Are you hoping to go from wet wood directly to finished thickness and shape without the drying process in between, or without the rough out process in between?
I really despise that up until about a month ago. That I thought the warped look was just unattractive and a shortcut. And if it is well balanced, and then you could also sand out the end grains so you could make a flat top. But there are, and I'm finding that actually there are people that like that. So it is, if the marketplace likes it, who am I to tell them that it is finished or a cheap shortcut? But I think if it's balanced well, as in the case, I got lucky with the Madrone that it was a well-balanced log, cut well, that it ended up looking okay to my eye.
Yeah, I like them. I can see, people have trouble with things that aren't round, but those are, I think, pretty successful.
Yeah, the nested set of oval bowls was kind of cool. I have to say that actually kind of like, wow, I haven't seen that before, and I think those would do well.
Think of Christian Bouchard's set of nested pieces, all thin-walled and all turned green and warped out the heck.
May I ask a technical question on Zoom?
Yes, go, Anna.
Is there a way to get the video block of who is talking to pop up?
It's happening right now.
Now it's yeah.
I think she needs to press the speaker view versus gallery view button, because she may be on gallery view showing everyone.
So there's non-gallery view. Can someone else talk?
Okay.
Okay, now it's
this is
working. It
Jim.
wasn't working before. Got
Okay.
it. Thank you.
It's a feature I think we can turn off and on too.
Right.
Isn't that correct?
Right. Yeah, before I had John in the spotlight all the time, but I took him off the spotlight. Now it's whoever's making the most noise.
All right, I'm going back to mute.
Another
Go ahead.
trick is if you're on mute and you want to unmute, just hit your space bar while you're talking and lift your finger off the space bar and you go back on mute.
Oh.
Ooh.
New feature. I'll have to remember that one. That's very convenient.
And
Okay, guys and gals, let me kind of conclude this, because I think we're getting down into a little less content, and I appreciate everybody being here. 67 people for our first Zoom meeting, and we're all testing out new kinds of things. Was great. Watch for our next meeting next month, which we will come on as all observers, and our presenter is not only out of town, he's out of the country. So Richard will send out more information on that next month. And the number of international and national artists and professionals doing Zoom style meetings now is constantly increasing. So all of a sudden we now have a greater audience available to us than we have in the past. And the chances of more professional demonstrations goes up because our costs are going down a little bit. So I want to thank everybody for their attendance this morning. I appreciate it. I had a great time. John, that was a wonderful tour. Dave and Richard, thanks for putting it all together for us. And we'll be with you again next month.